I'll never get used to hitting the gavel. Thanks everyone for coming. I wanted to give a few minutes. I know there was a little bit of difficulty finding parking spaces, so I wanted to give everybody a few minutes there. We may have a few more people coming in, but yes, we do have a quorum today. Thank you all for coming today. This is the June 22 edition of the Transportation Coordinating Committee, GNRC. And as I said, we do have a quorum. We just have one voting item today, but a little bit more notes on the meeting itself. We do still have the hybrid online version, so there may be some people out there watching this. If you're unable to hear anything, we'll try to keep help the questions in the room, try to repeat those where we can to help those in the chat. If you have any questions on those, please present those in the chat. And then also, we'll try to facilitate where we can. So with that in mind, we have one item on the agenda for today. It's the approval of the February 22 meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to endorse the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, motion and a second. The item is on the floor. Is there any discussions or comments on the item? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for a public comment portion of the agenda. Any member of the public who may wish to make comment to the TCC, please note you may be able to do so at this time. Please also note that the comments can be emailed to comments@gnrc.org. Seeing no comments, moving right along. We have no action items today, so section 3 of our agenda is vacant for today, but we do have some informational items for staff to present today. So for informational item 4A, that is amendments to the FY 2020-2023 TIP. I think we have Anna Emerson is set to do some presentation on this item. Anna?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. This is our fourth cycle of amendments for fiscal year 2022, excuse me. We only have one proposed amendment for this cycle, which we will present to the Transportation Policy Board later this month, and it will be up for their consideration for adoption. The request is from Columbia, and it's for their bridge replacement at Iron Bridge Road project. They're adding some local funds to the project that they needed to complete preliminary engineering, and it also requests the addition of USPBG funds from GNRC in order to proceed with construction on the project. No other proposed changes. Happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Hey, thank you, Anna. Any questions from the committee?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
And my apologies, Anna. I have one more to submit to you. It's about trying to think which one. It's a CMAQ grant in City of Franklin. It's just a TIP amendment. TDOT has requested an amendment before one goes to construction in City of Franklin.
Okay.
It's just a funding change because of some ADA requirements.
Okay.
To switch some 100% funding to 80-20 funding.
Okay.
So more of an administrative change than anything else, but
Okay.
I'll just let you have a look at it.
Yeah, let's get in touch.
I'll send it to you later today.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I take that's probably state and federal on the 80-20 part. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. It was originally intended to be 100% funding, and the ADA requirements kind of caught us for the signal.
Yeah. Happens to all of us. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Anna. Moving on to item 4B. This is an update on the development of the next step, which is FY 2023 to 2026. For that, I believe, Sean, I think you're taking this one.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll probably hear from all Anna, Daniel, and I on this topic, but we wanted to give you an update on a number of elements of the TIP as they've come together over the past couple months. I know we focused a lot on the suballocated portion of funding and the requests that you guys have made, but we've also received TDOT priorities for the next 4 years. And so we'll present, go through those proposed investments and the available funding for those projects. And we'll also, we didn't get a chance to cover a lot of the proposed transit investments over the next 4 years, and so we'll cover those items today as well. So I'll start off by just walking through kind of the financial outlook of the available funds that will be available to our region over the next 4 years, and then we'll kind of focus on the highway and then switch gears over to the transit side of things. So just to start off on the highway side, most of you are familiar that the gas tax that we pay at the pump, as well as some funding that gets shifted from the general fund, comes down through the Highway Trust Fund to the states through formula-based programs, as well as an increasing number of discretionary grant programs. And that funding gets, the formula-based funding comes down to TDOT that they can allocate and use anywhere in the state, and then there's a portion that is a mandatory sub-allocation to urbanized areas across the state. And so this map, on the next slide, showcases those urbanized areas across the state. You'll see the Nashville area MPO boundary, as well as some of the other MPOs across the state, Chattanooga, Memphis, Knoxville. And then for our area in particular, that allocation to the Nashville UZA in the dark blue, as well as the Murfreesboro UZA in the light blue. And so we'll talk today about, funding that can be allocated across the state in kind of any of these areas, as well as that funding that we've talked about more so being sub-allocated to our region.
Is that urbanized area indication still from the 2010 census?
Yeah, this is still based on the prior that we've used in the past. It doesn't capture the updated.
2020s urbanized area.
Correct. So focusing in on the GNRC footprint, you'll see these areas in a little bit greater detail. If we go to the next slide, looking at the amount of funding that's coming to the state on the highway side, we've got, you'll see that bump from 2021 to 2022. Typically it's been about 800 to 900 million statewide federal highway dollars, getting a significant bump in 2022 from the bipartisan infrastructure law, about a 20% increase, and then a slight increase over the 2023 through 2026. And so over the 4 years of the TIP, there's approximately $4.7 billion statewide for the highway program. And obviously they get matched with state and local dollars. And then, of that 4.7 billion, what can we expect to be spent within our region? And so this kind of illustrates the how that breaks down. And so if our region is getting about a quarter of the Tennessee federal apportionment through 2026, about 11% of that is going to our mandatory sub-allocation to prioritize for projects, and then the remaining portion is funding from the statewide pot that TDOT, we expect that TDOT would spend within our region just based on, average annual amounts of investment and, population size in our roadway infrastructure. How that breaks out is about, on average, about $250 billion a year on the statewide pot, as well as the mandatory sub-allocation being about 35 to 40 million of that. And so with this, that talks about a lot of the available revenue, and now Anna's going to talk through specifically a lot of the TDOT priorities proposed for investment over the next 4 years.
Thanks, Sean. Just to talk through an overview of what we've heard from TDOT on state-sponsored projects and how they intend to program funds in the TIP for those. This slide is just showing a breakdown of requested programming for their priorities and projects for the new TIP. They are intending to program 534.4 million. That is in federal dollar amounts. And then that's split between individual, specific discrete projects, as well as groupings, pots of funding that they utilize to carry out things like resurfacings and safety projects, that type of thing. This is programmed amounts by fiscal year in the upcoming TIP. And again, this is split out between groupings and specific projects. You'll notice that for fiscal year 2026, which is the last year that we'll program funds in the new TIP, there's obviously a much lower amount of funding projected to be programmed. That, of course, is tied to TDOT's 3-year work program process. So they only have they've only projected out funding for those first 3 years of our TIP, which is what we saw with the last TIP as well. And then this is individual projects as programmed by phase. You'll notice that a good portion of those individual projects are programmed for construction. So we have a good chunk of projects that are moving toward full implementation, which is good. You'll also note that for those projects that are being programmed for PE NEPA, PE design, or right-of-way, we kind of noted in that little box down there at the bottom that approximately $1.1 billion is going to be needed beyond this TIP in order to complete this full list of priorities that this pie chart represents. So a lot of money going forward just to bring the project names that you're going to be seeing in this TIP all the way to completion. This is a list of those projects that are being funded for construction. So that gray portion of that pie chart that we just looked at, broken this out by whether or not this appeared in the current TIP. If so, it'll have a TIP number there, the year that construction is expected, and then what that estimated total cost is going to be. And then this is a list of projects being funded for right-of-way. Same details available there. We have requested from TDOT the anticipated construction year for these projects. I don't know, Shane, if you wanted to say something there before I just plow forward.
Yeah, no, I'll be glad to jump in here. So, not sure, first of all, my name is Shane Hester. I'm the Director of Project Development in TDOT Region 3, which is our Middle Tennessee region. We cover the 26 counties in Middle Tennessee, bordered by the Tennessee River to the west, and the Cumberland Plateau to the east, Kentucky to the north, Alabama to the south. So from TDOT, from my position, I'm looking at things more from a regional perspective. A lot of what Anna's touching on here is we're involved, like we just completed the 3-year plan. Internally, TDOT is working, not sure how familiar everybody is with TDOT's EPIC initiative that we're currently going through right now. We're being tasked as a region to put together a 5-year fiscally constrained plan. That's going to be an internal document to support the 3-year plan. State law requires us to submit a list of projects in support of our budget each year, and so that's what the 3-year plan is. The first year is actually budgeted, and the outer 2 years are projected. But it's to make the 5-year plan is to solidify the 3-year plan and kind of work hand in hand. We're looking, what we're attempting to do is for projects that are programmed in out years, that there's consistency and there's predictability, and that those projects move forward. Next year's 3-year plan, we're hoping the projects in years 2 and 3 will be moved into years 1 and 2. So that's what we're doing. But it's an exercise in looking at it from how much money we're given, each year. Region 3 is the largest region in the state. And the way the dollars are typically allocated each year is they look at the percent of the population that are in each region and the percent of lane miles that are in each region. We are, like I said, we're the largest by a couple of counties, and the largest by lane miles and population. We get about 33% of the budget on average each year. So we're getting a third of the budget each year that's going towards kind of the middle portion of the state. think the exercise really, it shows you real quickly, you know, by the time you take and good state of repair projects, you take and put dollars in all of those programs, like in, you know, resurfacing program, and the bridge repair program, and the bridge replacement program, and the safety program. By the time we, like I said, we get about a third of the budget, what we're able to spend on capacity type improvement is about half of what we get is already programmed in what we call our programmatic project. So the other half is what you see here that goes into the TIF, the larger, what we call legislative projects. And it shows you real quick that there's not enough money to get to everything that, you know, that everybody wants to do. So, you need me to speak more about it.
I think
Just a
that's
little
great.
background on that.
No, yeah, I really appreciate the background and detail. We can move on to the next slide. These are projects that are in the current TIP that will not be shown with any program funding in the next TIP. So just kind of wanted to make everyone aware if maybe one of these was a project in your own community that you were keeping your eye on. Probably various reasons why this is occurring, like maybe some of these projects here at the top of the list that were in design or NEPA, maybe they're still in that ongoing phase of work and not quite ready to move to the next phase. And so funding was not identified for that next phase in the 3-year work program. Then some of these projects listed further down on the list that have not started at all, maybe additional planning is being done or priorities have shifted for the moment due to the inflation that we've all seen occurring a lot over the past few years. You know, if anybody has any questions about any of those in particular that you want us to kind of research for you, we're happy to do that, but just wanted to not have any surprises if you see some of these not appearing in the next tip for the time being.
I guess there's a question for that, Anna. So they're not in there currently, but I mean, looking at these, I think all these are state routes or interstates. They're probably going to be coming, I'm assuming, Shane, probably from the state's pod. Eventually, at some point in time, when those work programs come, I guess at those times when that comes up, these would enter back
Yeah,
with the appropriate
if
phase.
funding is identified, and you know, I know not to speak for you guys, of course, but I know sometimes as the years go on, schedules end up shifting, something ends up getting completed sooner than, you know, they thought it might be, and so maybe something else is running a little behind schedule, and so they'll go ahead and identify funding for moving something along to the next phase, and we'll get an amendment request, and TDOT will add that back into the TIP. So that's correct.
Are these index dollars for these projects? Are they projected cost at the year that they're gonna be projected to be implemented?
I think our understanding is that these are estimated total costs for the moment. We do often see those costs expand sometimes significantly when the next phase is programmed or things move along. Again, don't want to speak for you guys, but feel free to weigh in.
Well, I mean, a lot of what you'll see, these are not started or planning level estimates. So that's why you'll see a big increase. Once you get into engineering and you get more details, you kind of figure out what things are, you actually got an actual, you know, an estimate, or a five-page estimate, you know, you'll see those things go up. So it's just really hard to identify everything from a planning level estimate on, you know, what projects can cost at that 30,000 foot level, you know, that you're looking at it from.
I can speak to, it's on the other list, South Mount Juliet Road, but we went through, completed the transportation report on that, and then finished up our environmental document, now beginning, or almost about to enter into the right-of-way acquisition. It's currently programmed in the state and in the TIP. On that one, they just got the latest estimate for right-of-way and utilities on that, and it's another $2.5 million. I mean, that was a fairly freshly minted planning report, and then we go through about to obligate funds, and the latest estimate on that is another 2.5. That was, I'd say, about 25% increase.
I'll add we opened bids on the Donaldson Pike project on May 13th. TDOT had that project estimated at about $110 million for construction. Lowest bid was $135 million, or $136 million. So we're seeing inflation at an all-time high, just material shortage, supply chain issues, things like that. We're really experiencing, we're getting sticker shock when we're opening bids on projects. It's just, things are costing more now than they ever have.
Question, what do we do when they do go over the threshold?
The threshold for the tip itself has to be amended into the tip. Like if it exceeds a certain threshold, I'm speaking out of my lane here, I'm not a tip expert, but
No, you're exactly right. Yeah, if TDOT requests additional programming on a project, we have thresholds depending on what the project cost already is. It's kind of stair steps, like smaller projects, you can add more money to those without it prompting an amendment versus once you get into, millions and millions of dollars, the threshold's a little less, where we have to amend and just go through the process for the sake of public transparency.
And I guess that's why, and the staff has done a really good job on that over the last couple of years, on really assessing each project, where it is and how much it's gonna need. And so I guess part of that is, as these things increase, you're trying to say, okay, we got these 30 projects, which one of these projects really need money next year? And the next year, and then shifting that $2.5 million additional cost, and then really, eventually there's an end to it, but currently, it kind of pushes out 5 or 6 years, the money that we already have, and we know we'll get in the coming years.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, it's definitely true that, for our locally managed projects, I mean, we're dealing with the exact same issues that the state is. And so we're having to be really on top of, do you really need the money now versus can this maybe push out a few fiscal years and somebody else that really needs it now, go ahead and take it for the sake of us continuing to get money off the books, like we've been talking about for the past few years.
I've just got a question about how TDOT evaluates and prioritizes. Is it purely a political, thing with regard, and political and monetary thing with how much the locals match in, or do you follow the data at all? Like, I don't know how often y'all still doing traffic counts and fatality counts or accident counts on certain roadways.
safety's the number one driver that plays in all that when we're putting together like the work program
Yeah.
here, and then multiple things, congestion, needs across the community. It's not, it sounds cliche to say it's not, it's not political, but it's a lot, it's really data driven.
How often do y'all do traffic counts at this point?
We still give you update traffic counts every year now. Well, every two, we do them every year. It just, like I was saying earlier, the money only goes so far.
Oh, yeah, I understand the prioritization process. In fact, my biggest frustration is that on this list, you've got, not funded, but you've got, Vendor Ferry somewhere, Highway 7, Vendor Ferry. I wish I could get the other side from Vendor Ferry to just complete that bottleneck, from being a bottleneck between Lebanon and Nigeria. There's a lot of traffic in that corridor.
Is it possible that some of these unfunded projects may start showing up in your 5-year plan that fits into the 3-year program?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mentioned, 5-year plan is an internal document. We're actually working, and I mentioned it's fiscally constrained, so we're looking at what comes in the funnel and what can come out of the funnel. Up here, what's going in, what actually can come out. So the out years will have, other projects in there. You all know this, we fund projects, in phases for the larger legislative projects, engineering, right-of-way, and construction. So we're also looking at when projects are ready to go in that. Like if I started engineering on a big job this year, it may not be ready to start a right-of-way next year. If a right-of-way job's gonna take 3 years to acquire the right-of-way, it's not gonna be ready to go to construction until we have all the right-of-way.
I was just asking my question purely from the perspective of, I guess everybody's benefit is, what is the primary driver? Is it politics coming down from the legislature and the local mayors, or is it the data and the safety?
you've got to look at, you know, the leadership at TDOT's got to look at, you know, doing that across all 95 counties.
There was one project on the previous list that was not in the TIP. Ramp improvements at Joe B. Jackson. Is that gonna be completely state-funded improvements, or is that gonna rely upon federal funds to do that? And I don't really know if that was ever included in the TIP. I know that other, just down the street, down the road there, the exit 89 is not funded. And, which of course is a nightmare.
That was part of the proposal project,
Okay.
and it wasn't a tip. It's a tip.
Okay.
Yeah,
It just says new up there.
Yeah, there's a couple on here that have been decoupled. There were like 3 TDOT PIN numbers grouped as one tip project, and now they'll proceed independently. And so we'll put a new tip ID on there to indicate that, but, they're not necessarily new.
They're not jumping lines.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that just a little bit, like the Improve Act, the list of the 966 projects came out of the Improve Act. You know, a lot of them were like coupled together, just like Jim was just talking about. It'd be ramp improvements that exit 80, 81, you know, just down the line. And then as we've got the planning documents together, we've had to create like individual projects at those specific, you know, interchanges, just because we can't fund them all at one time. So we're breaking them up into manageable pieces that can be funded.
And I have a question, back on the urbanized area question I asked initially about what data we're using for our geographies. At one time, there was very real differentiation about what funding access local governments had based on whether or not it was in that urbanized area. Is that still the case in terms of the funding pots that we have? Are there still limitations if you're not in an urbanized area but need transportation for safety improvements or whatever, that you can't necessarily access that if you're not in that urbanized area?
You're talking about for like our MPO funds that we
Yes.
make available. I mean, I feel like since my time at the MPO, we've treated every member of the MPO fairly equitably in terms of access to funding. If you have a need and apply to us through the, you know, through the RTP, and then, you know, that trickling down to the tip. But I don't know if you have like a specific example or
The
concern
only
that
one that
you.
comes to mind, and it's really not, for the most part, it's not in my basket, kettle of fish anymore. It's, out to Lebanon's, with one small little stretch exception, would be Division Street. When I first got on, I've been on here a long time, since 2001, and actually did a little bit of monitoring of it from '96 forward. But, when we started trying to get Division Street safety money, there were parts of it that they said fell outside the urbanized area, and therefore we weren't eligible for some of the safety funds. And I do know that there's been changes in that particular program, but I don't know if or how much that's changed. But at this point, it pretty well falls inside Mount Hood and Lebanon's jurisdiction anyway, so they're pursuing it, and I'm glad they are. But those types of examples,
Yeah.
just wondering if that's still the case, if we would have an uphill battle.
I mean, as far as I know, if you're a member and the road is federal aid eligible, it shouldn't be a problem. I don't know if there's a detail on this thing there that you can think of, but.
Yeah, I think that, you know, especially if you're going after, HSIP funding that, you know, TDOT typically prioritizes, for, you know, spot safety improvements, that, I don't, that money is pretty broad eligibility in terms of it being able to be spent across the state. And I think even safety, Sean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even safety, there's broader eligibility beyond the federal aid to, even go beyond to local roads. So, I don't think that would be a restriction.
That urbanized money that I've allocated to the national urbanized area, from the federal perspective, is open to any member jurisdiction within the MPO planning area.
Inside or outside of the census cluster? Okay.
And that might be a good future presentation, is, getting the, like, safety program folks here that do like RSAs, and how to tap into that program. I know that they look at a lot of the data, but maybe there's opportunities to leverage some of the local expert knowledge on problematic areas.
Well, my follow-up question was gonna be, do we need the new census data to make accurate determinations about what ought to be proposed for the TIP? And that's not TDOT's fault, it's not your fault, that's not really anybody's fault, it's just that it was a cluster from the beginning, on the 2020 census. I'm used to going ahead and seeing the release of those types of geographies and data, not by now, very soon, and it's not happening right now.
I don't know that there's a situation where it would alter the county or the city's access to funds, you know,
Okay.
regardless of what we see out of that new census data.
Yeah, I think, we'd be ready to adapt and respond, but I think right now, we don't see any large concerns.
But it doesn't sound like it's, I'm satisfied with your answer.
Yeah. We'll certainly keep this body posted on all of that, though, as we learn more.
So,
Yeah.
Shane, on that 5-year, internal document, I think the MPO has a chance to weigh in on the prioritization for the 3-year legislative plan. Will there be any opportunity for the MPO to provide any input?
We're taking that same data and that same approach as a 5-year plan, looking at the MPO's priorities. The region actually does a priority. Steve Allen's office does another, they look at, what they call their decision lens or something along that they're looking at, safety data and everything. It's an aggregate of all of those things. When we're looking at those, living into that.
Any other questions before we move on? All right, well, we've had some discussion about these groupings that TDOT puts in the tip, so we just wanted to add a little brief overview about those 3 main pots of money, the National Highway Performance Program and Surface Transportation Block Grant. These are the portion of those funds that go directly to the state, are not suballocated to us. Both of those programs are used within the state and within our region to maintain pavement and bridge conditions. And then, of course, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which we've been talking about here just a couple of minutes ago. This is funding that is allocated to improve safety at high crash locations. TDOT administers various projects within all 3 of these funding programs. We don't always have a ton of visibility into what exactly is being done under those programs, so that we have requested a list of what they consider suitable candidates for each of these groupings, just so that we're aware of the universe of projects and priorities that are likely to advance in the near term, as well as maybe to give us a little insight into how we might be able to influence which projects fall under those groupings. But that's the last thing in this section on TDOT programming in the tip. So again, if there's any further discussion anyone wanted to have on state priorities before we move along, happy to hear those.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Sean and Anna.
Well, I'm gonna pass it off to Daniel to shift over to discussion on the transit funding in the tip, so.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
All right, so I'm going to take you through some of the apportionment statewide and then go through the actual requests that we've received from transit agencies in our region. So this is just a chart of federal transit apportionment statewide between 2010 and 2026. So you'll see that with the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's a big jump between 2021 and 2022, and then, of course, through the life of the TIP, out to 2026. So it's about a 30% increase, in transit funding, statewide, which comes out to about $130 million, annually, portion to transit. Not all of that funding goes to urbanized areas. Some, same with highway, goes to small rural areas as well. And then this is just a projection of transit revenue for the fiscal years that are in the life of the TIP. You'll see a pretty large amount of carryover, so transit funds that are carrying over into the new TIP from the current TIP, and then about $40 million in fiscal years 2023 through 2026. And this is just a breakdown of each of those formula funding programs. I'll just point out the difference between those first two. So there's the 5307 program for the Nashville Davidson UZA, and then below that, the Murfreesboro UZA. So you'll see carryover in that first column, and then how much revenue we have for transit for fiscal years 2023 to 2026. And then about $278 million available to the program. So now I'm going to take you through those transit investments. So this is just a summary of programmed amounts for fiscal years 2023 to 2026. You'll see 2023 is a little bit more than the other years. And these are just requests by fiscal year with the upcoming TIP. And these are transit priorities by purpose. You'll see the majority is going towards capital projects, while about 14% towards operations and a small amount towards planning, and that comes out to about $181 million throughout the life of the TIP. And these are transit capital projects by type. Majority is our maintenance type projects, followed by facilities, so new transit stations and transit facilities, and then purchase of new vehicles or rehab of existing vehicles, and then about 9% for equipment-related projects. And I'll hand it back to Sean to talk about highways.
We'll just stop there if there's any questions on the transit funding levels and priorities. I will point out too that if you want to look at specific details on projects, you can find all of that in the TIP tracker. We've got all of the, funding breakdown captured in there of, what's been proposed by fiscal year, as well as any new additional funding requests. The plan is to then, develop our TIP application for the next TIP, but we're just trying to get the details correct in the tracker, and then we'll be able to upload that pretty seamlessly. I guess one thing to add to the transit discussion, and Felix, feel free to jump in, but on the transit side, there is a significant amount of carryover funding, and so the amount of available funding exceeds the amount that's proposed to be programmed over the next 4 years, and you may want to highlight the some of the constraints that you guys are operating within as to why that tends to be the case. Just in terms of the not programming all of the money that is available, given the kind of lag.
Right, yeah, so it takes, sometimes with the funding, it's not like you get funding in a year and you all get that same year. Transit is kind of, sometimes you're spending money from previous years, so that's part of the constraint sometimes when we're trying to program funding that is from a grant that is a couple of years. We're trying to spend the old money first, so it doesn't last, and then we do some of the other projects. So we do have a good record in allocated money, so I'll highlight it.
So the first two columns are more or less the needs based on what we've already had in the TIP, and the last one is what the funding is available, right? So for instance, first two, there's less funding available than what we have listed needs in the current TIP, but like in the bus program, it looks like there's more money available than what's being pitched or proposed.
Yeah, I think, you know, and Felix may want to speak to this as well, but, you know, funding is contingent upon Metro's ability to match those funds, as well as, you know, what they have planned for the time, you know, that they know they can actually move forward with and expend those funds on. So they don't always necessarily program every dollar available with each TIP cycle, at least in the immediate term. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, is that, what is that bus and bus facilities program, is that only specifically available to,
Transit
MTA
agencies,
or
yeah.
MTA, or can other transit agencies?
It's for the urbanized area.
Mhm.
So for the national urbanized area, Franklin Transit, MTA, or RTA can have access to that money. Because of the amount being small and the type of, you know, paperwork that you have to go through it, there's an agreement between the three agencies, the MTA receives that particular about the bus facilities program money, for example. You look at the state of good repair, that's for fixed skyway. So the only thing that qualifies in this region for that is the vehicle's car. For example, so all the 5337 goes to RTA for fixed skyway, for example.
I think right now, the way that the available funding and programming is shaking out, the balance that we talked about is primarily in the Nashville urbanized 5307 category, which is, you know, where the majority of the money is.
I was just curious if that represented an opportunity for additional small-scale transit projects across the region. In the bottom, bus category. Bus or shuttle category.
You think the operations? Is that money?
Pilots or-
It's very limited. I mean, the amount of money you can use for operations,
Yeah.
you can really, most of this is capital.
I'm more thinking about anything that we'd be talking about would be a pilot project, if nothing else, to see if there's availability for demand for additional shuttle services from transit stations or that type of thing.
Yeah, and I think having the transit technology program as well, it is another avenue of using different funding costs on the highway side to accomplish what you're talking about. So the last kind of component that we want to talk about is coming back to the sub-allocated highway funding. I know we've talked about this one the most over the past couple months, but just a reminder, on this, we have more carryover funding than we have funding available through fiscal years 2023 through 2026. About, you know, we're looking at about $35 million on the, or almost $200 million in carryover funds and about for 35 to 40 million over the 2023 through 2026. If you go to the next slide, that just kind of showcases that amount of carryover funding versus what's going to be available over the coming 4 years, which totals about 320 million in total available money to program. We had kind of flagged the carbon reduction program beforehand because we were still awaiting some guidance, but I think we've learned that that money is available to be, or that funding source is available to be programmed. One option I think that we can consider would be utilizing that to, as part of our transit technology. Right now, we set aside some of our SCBG funds. Using the carbon reduction program is one opportunity of setting aside that funding for a future call for projects, and that, you know, frees up some SCBG money, which has broad eligibility for some of our existing projects. Go to the next slide. The So on the sub-allocated funding side, we also have more available funding than we have total requests currently. But I think as a couple of people touched on this, not only Shane's comments about some of the challenges that they're encountering with TDOT priorities and cost increases and some of the uncertainty related to projects that are earlier on in the project development phase or not yet started. I think staff shares those concerns about, although those funding requests have been made, that there's going to be changes to those projects as they move through project development, and so some hesitancy in committing all of these dollars when we're likely to see cost increases beyond what we're currently are known now. I think the other component, Keith, you said this well, is just in terms of priorities. A lot of the discussion of the Project Delivery Task Force has been around projects that are in need of funding and advancing through the development process, trying to meet those needs so that we can be delivering projects. Our carryover amount is pretty substantial, and so trying to target that funding and get it to projects that need it the most as they move through the project development process, I think is probably one of the main goals that has been discussed at Project Delivery. And so kind of still grappling through those aspects, and we're looking to schedule a meeting with TDOT to kind of better understand some of the challenges with local programs and the environmental NEPA process, but also to schedule a follow-up for our 6th Project Delivery Task Force meeting later this month as well, to grapple with some of these issues in more detail. I think the inflation is another one that is more substantial than even the beginning of this year when we were collecting updates from you all, and so these are just some of the things that we'll be grappling with. I will say that I'm going to switch gears into the UPWP shortly, but the projects that haven't started, there's been some discussion about requiring further planning before those projects are programmed onto the TIP or additional money added to those projects that are on the TIP. And I think that there's some potential opportunities as well to set aside funding for SDBG funding for further planning at the local level or project level. And so that's another opportunity that probably needs some more thought and feedback from you all on how that might work. But we've received, a couple of project requests through the UPWP that highlights that need even more, like more studies or plans to identify priorities within a jurisdiction. So I think that's all on the sub-allocated funds. Obviously, we'll be continuing to work through these issues. Our targeted date of want to give you an opportunity to not only see TDOT and transit priorities, but as we work towards a draft TIP in August that we can then circulate to first state and federal review to continue moving along the schedule. So feel free to take a look at the TIP tracker, and then we will notify you as well when we are able to start putting it into the TIP application for fiscal years 2023 through 2026, and any details that we need to iron out as we go. Any comments?
Anything else for staff on this item?
Thank you all. Very, very good information, very in-depth. We really appreciate your hard work.
Sometimes trying to make sense of allocation of funding can be a challenge. So next on our agenda item for today is the update for the annual call for studies for the UPWP. And I believe for this, I'm turning it back to Sean.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick with this one so we can get to the Hytch presentation. Wanted to give them an opportunity to get through their material. But just an update, thank you to those that completed the survey that we had. I guess where we're at now is I want to give you additional time to participate and take that survey, and also follow up with some of you that have provided updates through that process. Obviously, we're trying to collect, updates on some of those planning activities occurring at the local level throughout the region. One thing I wanted to highlight, if you go to the next slide, some of the initial survey responses, we have in there kind of the issues that are the highest priority within the region, and a lot of overlap, or at least so far in the responses that we've received, pretty consistent priorities of like the topics that are a higher priority as for the previous year. I think the rise in serious injuries and fatalities has risen to the top. Worsening traffic congestion is still up there, and then I think a significant jump for the affordability and housing choice has moved up to a higher priority. And so encourage you to continue participating, and we'll try and get that sample size up. In terms of some of the updates that we've received, I'll go through some of the updates that are, or member activities that are underway. If you see, items that are not captured, please let us know, and we can make sure that we're capturing the latest. But here's a number of activities that, are occurring at either the countywide level or sub-regional level, or sub-area level that we've captured from, Sumner County Active Transportation Plan to a lot of the jurisdictions in Williamson and Rutherford County working on a connector road joint study, looking to bridge kind of the connections between Smyrna and Franklin. Metro has a number of activities, bike ped related, from walk and bike master plan to Vision Zero action plan. And then WeGo's transit shelter planning implementation study. For those of you, I know some are participating in the Connect Downtown study, which kicked off recently, involving a number of entities within the inner loop area, and then Goose Creek coordination study in Franklin. Let us know if there's other things that are, not captured that we should be highlighting here, and then we'll work to get those incorporated into the update or amendment to the UPWP. If you go to the next slide, here's some of the items that we heard from you all of like planned and upcoming opportunities. Some of these we had captured in the existing UPWP. We'll try and capture, kind of updated timelines, costs. If you have a consultant on board, that'd be great information. You'll notice that we added a number of those activities in the bottom right that were recently awarded through the Urban Transportation Planning Grant process with TDOT, and so those will be moving forward in this coming year. And then lastly, just two new requests for funding, one from Metro for multimodal mobility master plan, and one from Sumner County and the communities within Sumner on corridor study for the net corridor planning study, kind of those subsequent phases 3 through 5. And so we'll want to follow up, but I think this is an opportunity where, sometimes TDOT has done planning reports for corridors, particularly on state routes, to kind of flesh out the concepts and needs, and before a project proceeds to NEPA and design. I think the net corridor could be an opportunity for that. I think another opportunity to explore would be what I mentioned of utilizing some of the SDBG funding for planning activities to support some of these more local planning efforts. We do some regional studies that are kind of focused on supporting the members and their needs across the region, but for some of these efforts that are kind of more focused or in a particular county or within a particular corridor, the STBG pot might be a more suitable candidate to advance some of that work. So I'll just plug the survey again. Please, take an opportunity, and then we'll continue to, as people fill out those responses, we'll reach out to you as well with, questions or comments on information that you've provided. So we'll make sure we get all those details ready for the amendment in August. Any questions on that?
All right. Seeing none on that, thank you, Sean. If there's anything, I guess we've got timelines for all that. So, moving on to our next item on the agenda. So, it's item 4D. This is for the Hytch Rewards presentation. Sean, I don't know if you'd be doing the intros on this one, I guess.
Yeah, I can do a brief introduction.
All right, take it away.
Well, thank you, Mark and Robert, for being patient back there. We this has been a project that's been in the works for a number of years now. For those of you who are dating back to 2019, when we had our carved out funding from our regional transportation plan for a regional transit and technology program. And that was focused on really accelerating the development of emerging smart mobility solutions and trying to improve traffic conditions and modernize our transit options across the region. And GNRC led an initial grant round in 2019. And this one was specifically targeted at programs that deploy technology for the purposes of promoting and implementing strategies that encourage alternatives to driving, a lot of TDM-related strategies. And also, in addition to the TDM, looking to help elevate civic engagement in the regional transportation planning process. And so through that call for projects, we awarded 3 grants, and one was for the Nashville Downtown Partnership, one was for Hytch Rewards for a TDM campaign throughout the MPO area, Nashville area MPO, and then also for Vanderbilt University for some tools and monitoring of deployment of TDM solutions around that campus. And so, although it's been a long time from 2019 to now, and we've gone through a pandemic and changing travel patterns, I think that it's a good time to pick this project back up and start to launch this Hytch Rewards platform within the region. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mark Cleveland and Robert Hartline. It's going to kind of talk about the Hytch Rewards, kind of the mission, some of the platform capabilities, and how we hope to deploy it to achieve some of the goals and objectives of our regional transportation plan in the region.
Thank you. Hey, my name is Robert Hartline. This is Mark Cleveland, and we're with Hytch Rewards. A lot has happened with the pandemic. I learned a lot. I learned that staying at the house all day wasn't exactly the funnest, but I did enjoy my kids. I also learned as an employer of 400 people that when you pull those people out of the office and are away from their direct relationships, they don't want to stay at the job anymore. Your relationships at work matter to you. That is what gives you joy during the workday, being around your friends. What I also learned is the pandemic can do a great job of getting rid of traffic. How wonderful they are at that, right? Unfortunately, we can't keep both, right? We both need to get together, we've got to get to work, and we've got to be together. Our goal is to track and influence daily commute in any and every mode. Influence means, what can I do to spark someone to make a decision to take a coworker to work? An incentive. Something that would allow someone to make the decision to bring someone along into work. And now more than ever, bringing someone to work is necessary for employers to get the people they need at work. They have work to do, and there are people in your community that don't have access to public transit, and guess what? They also don't have a car. But there's plenty of seats on the highways. Our mission is to work and get those seats filled. This is a very inexpensive solution to be able to do this. We did this some years ago with a little bit of money and got 13 million shared miles. But it takes a spark. You have to create some reason that's in it for them. Now, I will tell you this, that yes, they may have been incentivized with a little bit of coins, a little bit of money to take someone to work, but there's something bigger at stake here. One of the things I also learned in the pandemic, I didn't know my neighbors. You suddenly got to thinking about who are my neighbors. Now I got some time, maybe I should get to know our neighbors. But those neighbors are the same people that could save you $300 a month in fuel if you just simply knew that they went to the same place you did, and you just decided to take them with you. Now, one of the things that we're able to do with this program is create a feedback mechanism. So we're going to be able to figure out through time, through our experience in the past, when we create what we call a rule, but I want you to think of a rule, sometimes people think of rules or things we have to follow, right? These are incentives that we design based on lots of different factors. If we want more people riding in the car together, we increase the number of rewards for the number of people that person is taking in to work. But keep in mind, they're going to do it for the initial coin, but at the end of the day, what we discovered when we did this program before, people enjoyed riding to work with another person, and the spark just allowed that to happen. But they keep doing a carpool because they enjoy the commute in a different way. Now, could we make the commute faster if lots of people decide to ride together? Absolutely, it's true. But I think there's better something at play. If I can give an opportunity to someone who doesn't have access to transit, a job and an opportunity, we all win. The community wins by people and neighbors getting together and sharing these rides. But taking this information, tracking this, giving this feedback mechanism, and then remodeling it as we go along, that's what we get to do here. And what's unique about this program than a lot of things that we would do as a planning group, we get to see the results really fast. And so instead of thinking of in terms of 10 and 20 years out, I may or may not get to experience the benefit of the energy that you guys spend every day. The energy that we spend on this program, you're going to be able to see results. You're going to see this in more real time than you've ever done before.
Back to Shane's comment, data-driven.
Data-driven. Now, we have an app, but that's not what we are. If we are a hammer. I want you to understand this concept. If you were an alien coming into Earth, you saw a hammer sitting on the table, you would know what to do with that hammer. But if you saw someone grab that hammer and crash it against a nail against two pieces of wood, what would happen? You would connect those two pieces of wood, you would instantly know how to use that tool. Our tool is also a hammer, okay? But what's different is the incentive is to nail the two pieces of wood or two people that we're putting together. And you guys are helping us collect those nails so we can crash them against two other people so they can ride work together. How employers are going to want to engage with us, they need staff in a desperate, meaningful way. They have trouble getting people to work. They have trouble getting people to stay at work. I couldn't tell you how many employers, in my fact, this happened to me all the time, is people not lasting through the first initial phase of the first couple of weeks. They often would last much further when they had a mentor or someone that held their hand through that transition of a new job. It's scary to start a new job for a lot of people. Imagine for a moment we were running an adequate mentorship program to work, how much faster They would be able to onboard new people and then keep them staying in the job. Brands and advertisers are going to be in front of this audience. They're going to be using our app to start their ride in the morning and end their ride. At the end of the evening, they're going to do the same thing. So they're going to be engaging with our app and seeing messaging that they'll be paying for. And obviously, the government knows this too. Everyone knows, and they all have experienced this. When you ride with someone, your commute seems like it was a lot less time. You all can agree to that. When you're riding with someone else that you enjoy, it's a different experience that is going to help you. Less depression, less financial concerns, less work-related stress, sleep, and not having enough time to spend on your health is a big reason for.
Okay. So Rob and I hitched to this meeting. We plan our transportation just like I think you want everybody to plan their transportation more completely. And I know that Robert spent a lot of time on the bus as well. So the commute seems to go faster when you don't have to drive either. So I just wanted to point that. Look, these are the reasons that people are motivated to participate and why they care. We've got commuters that are just looking for a better way, and we've got climate advocates that want to get behind something. In our case, we plan a tree for every mile that you hitch. Transportation partners have an opportunity to use our network to incentivize return to ridership programs, fan pools, et cetera. Employers, Robert hit the employer highlight. We need employers to be a part of the public-private partnership, and they all have extremely selfish motivations, right? They want to fund things that matter to their bottom line, matter to their people, matter to this location, and then the other location is a little different, and this location's on the bus line, and this one's not. You know, we see these requirements for flexibility in the employer arena all the time. Transportation demand management professionals care, you care, and we need your help to make this successful. We also are passing around two sheets. If you'll sign up and put your email and date of birth there, we're going to send you a message here at the end of the week so that you can join our current demonstration system and experience what it's like to get paid and to do the things that you might imagine important. 3 people in the car, driving on the HOV lanes, delaying your departures, you're outside the peak traffic, sharing rides during peak traffic, all these things we measure and map. And then, obviously, the function here is to try to draw together the private interest and the government interest so that we can create an ecosystem. And that's what the platform's been designed to do. One secure platform. We're going to now say, touching a little bit on what Robert mentioned, why is this a perfect storm? Well, you said $300 a month. Right now, it's about $600 a month. I don't know, raise your hand if your car gets 20 miles to the gallon. Yeah. Okay. Keep your hand up if it's less than that. Some of us have bigger cars, big families, soccer parents, et cetera. Look, it's costing people 20 cents a mile right now to go to a place of work. And we're not all talking about folks in socioeconomic areas that have an Escalade and can afford private transportation and drive wherever they want to, whenever they want to. Fuel prices don't really matter. We're talking about people on fixed incomes, workforce, wage earners. We're talking about people that don't own cars. We're talking about people on the fringe and a lot of our service workers, et cetera. This price of gas right now is really motivating employers. We've got lots of stories to talk about that. Labor shortage, as Robert mentioned, is motivating employers. You can't even get people to show up for the interview that they can employ. And we hear that often. We know that return to work and hybrid workforce policy for the future of motivating people to go to a place of work is in flux. No one really absolutely knows what the future is going to look like. But this is a perfect storm. People are studying this issue now. Environmental incentives, the initiative, I think today for us to be worried about climate change is just increased because people are more educated and continually become more aware of the impact. So you have to have a system that will support your environmental initiatives. Turnover torture, we call this, we're hearing this a lot. If you have 70% of your workforce is stable and 30% of it's turning over. And in that 30%, 10% is just churning forever. The problem is that now your stable workforce is starting to get recruited away for shorter commutes. And these are good things. Shorter commutes is a good thing. But from the employer's perspective, they just can't pick up and move their leather factory. They just can't pick up and move their rearview mirror manufacturing plant in some rural community part of our region. So they're suffering from recruiting and retention, and they're spending, when I say suffering, they're spending lots and lots and lots of advertising dollars and professional support dollars and recruiting efforts, and then they're finding that they can't even keep the people that they used to believe were their stable workforce. And then this is a post-pandemic transition. We all need to figure out what the new data tells us and what the new patterns are. So we think it's a perfect storm. I want to touch a little bit about what Robert mentioned earlier. Robert is maybe not known to all of you, but 56 Sprint stores throughout the Southeast. If anybody knows a cell phone and knows how cell phones work and apps, it's Robert. I've had an opportunity to be in this business partner with Robert for almost 6 years now, building a platform, multiple $1 million platform, and it's been a great pleasure to use actually private funding, all private funding, to get all of our data and our base system put together. And now we have an opportunity to have GNRC lead this public-private partnership. What I wanted to show you here was off our website. If you go to our website, these are the 6 tiles that businesses, we're talking to businesses about specifically. Corporate social responsibility, communicating how you're going to be a better company. Activity-based rewards, decision makers, do they just want to pay you for doing what they want you to do? Well, this system is an activity-based tracking system, an activity-based reward system, and there are no costs unless people do exactly what you want them to do. I'm going to describe a little bit about how our rules work, or the nails, how we basically forge a nail, and then the system drives it home. Hyper-targeted messaging, that is our ability to serve brands, to serve an educational objective, to help people who are pushing up one particular corridor become aware that there's an incentive to take a different corridor. So hyper-targeted, geo-specific, group-specific, identity-specific messaging on the platform. Mentorship to work is really powerful. If you think about what it's worth to put one of your best people in the car with 2 or 3 people who are brand new, and you're going to pay them 50 cents a mile tax-free income to do that. So just imagine that you go back to your own workforce, you identify the 10 or 15% of your employee team that are truly the up-and-comer trainer, the best influences on all of your people, and you put a mentorship program in place for whenever they're mobile. If they're taking somebody else on your team, then they get paid up to they actually can get paid up to 58 cents a mile. That's a lot of money, by the way. People will change their behavior for more money. And they'll also change their behavior for a little bit of money. We discovered that through our 13 million mile analysis. Concierge car pools up there on the top. We're putting a high touch, high communication focus on using the data to drive the matching and the conversations that introduce people. Fuel reimbursement, as Robert already mentioned, as I mentioned, is a huge driver. We've got some companies that are just writing $150 checks to the entire employee base because they don't have any more efficient way to do it. I've seen major construction sites with extraordinary expenses just to get people to come to work sites and build things. And now you're seeing the inflation drive into your own projects. We all have to figure out a way to efficiently track and reimburse people for their fuel costs. So this is an example of sort of the messaging that we will bring and are bringing to the employer community. This is a graphic that I think helps kind of explain just the basis from the ground up. The first thing we're trying to do is get everybody involved in an environmental project. Every single company can put all their employees into the system, and they can all be planting trees on every mile they take, whether they're in a mass transit, a van pool, or a personal car driving alone. So we're trying to have one unifying principle. We plant trees when we drive. And the second thing, The second thing is, that with this PPP partnership we're putting together, public-private partnership, Nashville's growth and through traffic engagement. This is where we're putting the base cash rewards, so people can move all over the place and experience cash rewards and develop these habits of tracking and contributing their data to this collective effort. And then on top of that, we have the individual corporations that are located throughout various different places in Nashville and have their own unique transportation issues and concerns. And they put additional rewards on top of the base rewards. So we call this stack. This is how you get people to do stuff you need to do. There's something in it for me, and I care about the environment. There's something in it for me, and I care about my wallet, and I can pretty much get rewarded most of the time I do anything good. And then there's a lot more money available when I do things that are highly specific and super rules driven. So that's an effort to try to describe that graphically. Now, here's an effort to try to describe what does it mean to be an employee in a car who's getting paid different, right? So I have some employers that care about the driver. They want to reimburse the driver. Other employers that are drivers and passengers are the same price, you know. Or many of them that want to pay their employees to ride with other employees. So we differentiate that price because we know that they're employees working for you at this region, in this location, doing this thing. And then over here is the non-employee, somebody that happens to live in the same neighborhood but works in the building next door. This person gets paid in order to be a part of this proposed project. Now, imagine that a penny came from the GNRC, because this person's in a 3-person carpool. 1 or 2 pennies came from the employer, and maybe a penny comes from this GNRC public-private partnership. So what I'm describing there is just a layering of rewards and a layering and stacking of various different sources of funding. It's essentially unlimited. It's unlimited. It's brands, it's advertisers, it's employers, it's communities, and it's you. This is just a quick example of one specific rule. And when you sign up, when you all sign up on the sign-up sheet, give us your date of birth and your email contact, and we can follow up with you and give you the code you need to log in. You'll start seeing this in the app. I know some of you have downloaded the app and used it, and you may have seen some of our just general brand supporters that are in there. This is an example of a specific rule, and up at the top, the banner graphic, that is the message that comes into the app platform. If you had, and then there's the URL. That URL is a specifically, uniquely designed educational tool, and it can say whatever the heck you want it to say because you're the sponsor of that rule, right? And so we create a graphic that communicates what you want to communicate. We have it's interactive, so it lands on further education, and that can go wherever else you think it's important to take people. Then we basically say, okay, 231,000 points have been issued on this rule specifically. We've issued $231 in cash. There's been 91 trips. There's been 3,633 miles traveled with 3 people or more in a car. This applies to everyone in North America. That's our geographic fence. This is a demonstration rule. So we're putting this demonstration rule everywhere in North America, but I can narrow that down to an individual corridor, down to an origination, down to a destination. I'll show you that in the next slide. And so essentially, these are the conditions. Greater than 3 people, there is an employee in the trip. If there's 3 people with no employee in the trip, this rule doesn't trigger, right? So all y'all are, you know, data-driven. You're thinking in terms of numbers. You're thinking in terms of systems all the time. You're engineers. You're professionals. This is a giant if-then statement in the sky. And we're tracking and rewarding and real-time calculating people's rewards based on what they do that's good for society. And then down the bottom, reward A, for each mile, the reward is a dime. So you get a dime per mile for being with 3 people in a carpool at a maximum of 20 miles. I can set a minimum, I can set a maximum, I can set a minimum distance, all the kinds of, just imagine it, we've got it already now. And here's an example of the GNRC rule. Here's your MPO area. This particular rule is not active, but it is prepared, and it's just for an example, it would actually be something that I would put in place. The ride has to originate inside this geographic zone, that's your MPO area. It has to terminate also inside that area. I have another set of variables I can say, and it has to go on Interstate 24. And it has to go on Interstate 24 from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. because we're now promoting off-peak bonus, a bonus for driving off-peak and out of the crazy commute. So, there's an example of multiple geographic conditions, and here, transportation mode is a car. If I want to narrow it down, I can do things like this reward applies to the WeGo rail system and only on these windows of times, only on Monday through Friday and never on Sunday. So just imagine, these are the nails. Matter of fact, we have a giant barrel of nails. We just got to reach in and pick the one that we really like and start in. And this is just my effort to describe to you, if you were looking at the app today, you would see the Let's Hitch Engage, that's geo-aware. Timberland is the sponsor. They're trying to tell people about their community commitment to the green planet. But the next thing you do is you say, well, what mode am I on? And then you go into your summary on the far right. That's your post-trip summary. And I'm just basically showing you that these banners are the interactive messages that come to you based on all these variables we just discussed. And they can also, this area above, we call it the hero section, but that can also be banner messaging from sponsorship. So that's essentially the nut and bolt and nail and hammer and wood analogy that we probably try to cram in 10 minutes and then start having a conversation about. I guess the most important thing that I didn't hit yet, but I'd like to, is there is an opportunity for the GNRC is assembling a guiding group to, and Sean might want to talk about that, to help define the rules. I don't know what your traffic situation is in Franklin on one particular spot, or what your construction concerns are in other areas. I do know, for example, how Interstate 24 has the ladder system and you're doing the intelligent corridor. What happens when you add incentives to people on that day under those conditions to take these alternative routes? That's just a way to describe, in your area of expertise, you can imagine a whole bunch of nails. Robert and I built the hammer, and now the wood is out there. The people that we need to have them change their behavior, we need to get them inspired to think differently, to be advocates for mobility, advocates for modes, and to return, to work. For myself, I've been working at home for so long, the pandemic just came and went, it was no big deal. But for most people, it was life-changing. We've all got some new habits and some new expertise and some new skills in not working in a social environment, being isolated. We've all grown in that way, as Robert mentioned. But we've also suffered. And we think that bringing people together is a real important way to move forward. And there are lots of employers that need you to be at a specific place at a specific time. And we want to help them build their funnel of job opportunities so we can have a more successful region and a workforce engaged.
I'll just add to what Mark is talking about is obviously there's a number of different conditions and to set the rules to guide certain behaviors. And so one thing that we would like to do as like a immediate next step is to identify or assemble a task force that is going to help identify what those conditions should be so that it aligns with achieving the goals and objectives of our regional transportation plan. You heard from Mark that, there's a lot of different combinations that you can utilize to, shift away from non-SOV modes to avoid certain travel time periods, peak evening, peak morning commutes, or even, detour around congested corridors or corridors under construction. So utilizing a lot of the data that we have from, the existing condition of the system and, through INRIX data and our Max's team has been, continuing to track vehicle speeds. And so utilizing that information with the different conditions and rules that we can set, I think there's a lot of opportunities to, make those customized so that they fit our region and our objectives that we want to accomplish.
The structure of this program has three basic budgetary buckets. You want to- I can address it just at the top level. About half of the total funding is available for inspiring cash rewards, for paying and funding the cash rewards. About 1/3 of it is roughly education and outreach, telling people that they can do things better and get incentivized for it. And the other is related to the software platform itself. To my knowledge, this is the first time anywhere in the country that 7-county region, a truly regional transportation demand management system has been deployed. There are cities like Franklin is in the system, Brentwood is in the system, there are employers that are in the system. So again, back to the stacked rewards. When we have this unique situation where there's funding available for the cash rewards, we're able to get large-scale adoption. And each participant has their own access to their own universe inside this platform, and it's fully integrated. I would just say that if you're an agency in this room, you have access to the platform today and can go forward and put your people in it and create from your own budgets and your own universe, your own set of requirements that are rules that live in the sky and apply to the people that you are focused on. It could be your employee base, it could be, as we discussed already. But what we're hoping that you'll do is that you'll sign up on this form so we can follow up with you. We can add you to the system. We'll treat you kind of like our demonstration team. And then you can drive around and experience it. It's just it's a great opportunity because there's the history of transportation demand management software platforms have been all sort of behind a firewall, resident inside your system, like an app, like a platform or a piece of software that you bought, you subscribed to, and then you got a fee. And in this situation, the agencies and partners at the GNRC have access to the system at scale at no charge. So that's an opportunity for you to not only participate yourself, but look back in your own organization and see where you can put TDM practices in place and then bring your people access to the larger funds. And all the data is anonymized and provided to the GNRC based on these rules. I think that's important to know. It winds up leaving you with an opportunity. Max and the team have got really good data, aggregate, macro, anonymized. You know that there's movement, you know where the pressure is. You don't have a direct relationship with that community. That's what Hytch allows you to have, is direct communication with that community based on your level of participation. I think, now what?
All right. Thanks, guys, for that. Any questions, comments, from this committee?
Just send that way if you want.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for the presentation on that. So the sign-up will be going around. For our next item on the agenda, going to our regular reports portion of the agenda, I think is for the federal highway, we have Sean Santaya.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So, just really one item for the good of the group today. On May 16th, US DOT opened our Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary grant program. Most everyone's probably aware of this, but we made available for FY 22 $1 billion for local governments and MPOs to apply for safety planning and implementation grants. So this is the intent of this program is to support our safe system approach that the administration has been promoting since the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So those grants can be, again, for planning, but also infrastructural improvements, behavioral improvements that promote safety, or behavioral projects that promote safety improvements, operational projects that advance safety, improvement. So, there's a broad sort of swath of eligible activities. The intent is that these activities come from a comprehensive safety action plan, so there is some of that guidance in the notice of funding. And we are funding those comprehensive safety action plans in areas where they're not already present. USDOT is going to be hosting a series of how to apply webinars that are listed on our website. I encourage everyone to participate in those, and I think the GNRC staff should have that link. But that's all that we've got from FHWA.
All right, any questions for Sean? No, I watched a presentation Pam gave for ASHI a couple of weeks ago, so brought up a lot of questions on what that entails for this upcoming year. I think a lot of people may not have the action plans in place, I know us included. So.
Yeah, there's only a couple of communities across Tennessee that might already have that.
I think, talked with Jessica, I think it's one of the Tri-Cities, Kingsport.
Kingsport, yeah.
Has
Kingsport has
one.
one that we still have to assess whether or not it's compliant, or not compliant with the requirements. Yeah.
Metro Nashville, I think you all have one as well.
Yeah, it should, based on the criteria.
Yeah. So, I anticipate that, my community is probably gonna be looking in that direction, so. All right, thank you very much.
Related to that too, I think there's a couple of NPOs that are exploring the idea of applying jointly with some of their communities, if not, all of their region. And so, feel free to reach out to us if you have any interest or, thoughts on that. I think that's a good opportunity. And, we've talked a lot about safety and the different, things that we can and can't accomplish, but I think maybe going through an exercise like a comprehensive safety action plan would help, kind of focus those efforts on, how we could target our, influence as well as our, investment funding.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Sean. Okay, next for the TDOT report, Jonathan or Shane, who wants to take it?
Just a brief update on the transportation planning grant. And I know on your screen, it had Millersville and Constellation listed. Also, I don't think I saw Franklin Transit and Westmore. Also, two others that we're doing. The consultants, those scoring process is due this Friday, so we're going to let the consultants know this Friday which cities they've been awarded, and the goal is to get those under contract starting August 1st. So, those of you who didn't apply, we're going to open it again in October, so feel free to do that. So we funded 100% this year, so hopefully we can have something similar moving forward.
Yeah. All right, I know, that's, I guess, one of the things I was looking at, getting the multimodal access grants, NOIs submitted. We received our, I guess, invitation to apply is what I think it was called, so I think that's going on, started today. I had my notes July 19th, is that correct? Okay. All right.
I got a quick question. I sent out a couple of emails. I didn't get a response back from the email asking further questions. I was a little bit confused. I didn't know what was going on.
Return to the multimodal access grant?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm working multimodal. Let me see if I can get Peter to respond to you. Yeah, I'm sorry about that for any issues you had.
Any other questions for Jonathan? Okay, all right, thanks so much. For the chair's report, I think just wanted to emphasize Safe Streets for All and multimodal access grants, but nothing else on my side of the thing. For the next, we'll go to the staff report. Sean, turn it over to you.
I don't think I have anything else to add, just, I will recirculate the, UPWP survey, just so that we can, continue to iron out those activities that are gonna be underway or planned in the near future. And then we'll likely follow up, to clarify those details, and then we'll circulate any, of the information that we get regarding any of the federal discretionary grant opportunities or upcoming webinars as well. But, I think that's all.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Before we adjourn today, is there anyone else wishing to bring any other business before the committee.
If I could mention one thing, the Connect Downtown survey is still open until around the middle of this month. And we want everyone to participate in that, not just those who work or live in downtown or even Davidson County. So connectdowntown.nashville.gov is where you can go to get that survey, so I encourage everyone to do that.
All right, thanks, Marty. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All right, we are adjourned.